Good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing? My name is Taha. I'm an incoming senior at Appoquinimink High School in Middletown, and today I'm here to talk about my Muslim role model, and that is the Prophet Muhammad, the man most closely associated with the religion of Islam, a man of strength, virtue, character, faith, and loyalty. The Prophet's impact can still be felt today, and it will continue to be felt generations from now. This man represents over 1 billion people and binds those 1 billion people to their faith, their beliefs, their religion, and most importantly, their God. Muhammad was more than just an Arab man. He was a spiritual link between the divine and the human. But what was it that made Muhammad so appealing to his people, his family, and most importantly, his God? The answer is quite simple. He was a man of his word, he didn't hold a grudge against anyone, and he was sincere and kind in everything he did. And this is one of the qualities I admire about him the most. It's a well-known fact that the Prophet was a family man. He was well respected in society before and after his prophethood. Throughout his life, people always talked about him as an honest, truthful, caring man. Well, one example of this is when he took his uncle's name was Abu Talib, and he took his son under his care because Abu Talib had a lot of kids, so he wanted to reduce his uncle's burden. So he took one of his children upon him and raised him, took care of him. And this is quite significant because it inspired another fellow Muslim to take another one of Abu Talib's kids and raise him. So as one of his actions caused a ripple effect in the society, which I find really significant. What else? But as to return the favor, his uncle made sure to protect and care for him in the initial stages of his prophethood, when when the Prophet was facing a lot of adversity and a lot of violence and that kind of stuff. And not just he had many uncles and aunts, and he made sure he didn't just take care of their material needs, but he also took care of their spiritual needs. He also made sure he always maintained good relations with them. He's explicitly told us not to burn bridges with our family members. And I'm sure your parents, grandparents have taught everyone in this room the same thing. He's quoted saying, "Treating your kin with the same kindness as they treat you is not caring and looking out for them. But the one who takes care of his kin even after they've broken relations with him is the one who truly looks out for his people." The Prophet, without a doubt, cared for his family and distant family, and taught not only the people at the time how to treat their family, but the 1 billion plus Muslims today. Along with his distant relatives, the Prophet loved his children. Same as his relatives, he took care of their material and spiritual needs. This is a very interesting fact. He used to go to his daughter's house every morning and wake her up for morning prayers. And this is quite interesting because even after she was married and she had a man by her side, he used to still take care of her repeatedly, day after day, which is quite different at the time. Another one of his favorite pastimes was to spend time with his 2 grandchildren. He's been quoted saying he was never happier than when he was with his 2 grandchildren. And think about it for a sec. A man who had to lead a whole religion, give the whole community advice, fight religious wars, still took out time from his day to spend with his grandchildren. So not only did he teach us how to love our family, but from a parenting aspect, he taught us how to raise our children. And my mom here, and I'm sure the rest of the parents here, know what it's like to treat your children correctly. Every single one of the Prophet's actions was meant to be an example for all Muslims. As I said earlier, I try to emulate his quality of genuine care and concern for people. I'm an active volunteer in my community, and I plan on being one for the rest of my life. I've done many types of volunteering, but my favorite probably has to be tutoring children, because when you see a child that's younger than you solve a problem they've been struggling with or learning something new, you can see you can see a change in their emotion. And when I was younger, I used to struggle with the same stuff. So you know what they're going through. It makes you feel better. It makes me feel complete. So giving is something that the prophet did in abundance, whether it be time, money, effort. It's you have to give. That's why I firmly believe that. I also deeply care about my family and friends. My family is my rock. I never make a decision without them, and they're in the back of my mind 24/7. And I make sure to treat my mother, father, grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins with the same respect that they treat me with, just like the prophet taught us. My friends are also a huge part of my life. Not all of them are Muslim, but that doesn't affect the amount of respect I give them. There's a story of the prophet where he said, whenever there's a funeral procession going on, make sure you stand up and pay your respects to that person. So there was a funeral procession, and the prophet stood up, and there was a man near him, and he said, it was the coffin of a Jew. He said, "Why did you stand up?" And the prophet boldly replied, he said, "Was he not a living being soul?" So that right there is end all be all, that you need to treat everybody the same way, regardless of their religion, skin color. There's another story which I recently found out about. It's there's a monastery called St. Catherine's Monastery. It's one of the oldest monasteries in the world, and they had sent a delegation to the prophet, asking for his friendship and his protection, and the prophet sent back a charter. He said that you have our protection, you have our friendship, and the last words of the charter stated, "No one of the Muslims is to deny this covenant until the last day." This guaranteed the eternal protection and friendship between Muslims and Christians until the last day. These acts show that the prophet viewed everyone as equal, nothing more, nothing less. And the most important example of this quality of the prophet is probably that he used to pray all night long for us, for children here, the adults there. We weren't even alive at the time. The last words that the prophet said before he died were ummati, which means, in Arabic, it means the people, my people. So a man who had so much care for people who didn't even exist at the time, I can't imagine how much emotion he had in his heart at the time. And even if I could emulate a tenth of that or a 100th of that, I think that would be a fulfilling life. Most people would tell you I'm a kind, caring, loving, and respectful man. Yes, I have learned this through my parents and my family, but most of all, I've learned this through my religion, my God, and my Prophet Muhammad. Thank you. And here's my good friend Rumi. I've known him since kindergarten. So,
thanks, Taha. So my name is Rumi Khan. I'm a rising senior at Newark Charter High School, and today I will be talking about my role model. So this person is a seminal personality who was not only critical for the foundation of Islam, but also to me personally. Her name is Khadija al-Kubra. She was the wife of the Prophet. But first, let me tell you a little bit about her, just historical facts. She was born in the mid-550s, and she was known originally for her extraordinary entrepreneurial prowess. She amassed a massive amount of wealth in the city of Mecca, and lots of political power, which is very strange for women at the time. She used her wealth to serve the poor parts of Mecca, and also to take care of her family members and the impoverished community. So she amassed her wealth by running a caravan business. She was in charge of over half of all the trade that went in and out of Mecca, sending goods to the Byzantine Empire across the ocean. So that gave her a lot of power in the region, and it also was unique because, again, a person of her gender would not really usually have so much power or status. She was so famous that she went by the name Khadija al-Kubra. Al-Kubra means the Great, so she was known as the Great. So the story goes that she, of course, could not run her caravan herself, so she had to hire a representative to run the caravan. So she looked around the community to find someone who was known to be honest or trustworthy, and she found a man who we now know as Prophet Muhammad. She hired him out for a few years to run the caravan, and when she got to know him personally, she realized that this was a very extraordinary individual. At the time, she was 45 and he was 25, and she offered to marry him. He responded by saying, I'm sorry, I'm not wealthy enough. I can't support a wife. I'm going to have to say no. And she responded by saying, what if I told you that your wife could support herself? They agreed. So the time came for revelation where Muhammad became a prophet. This was a tumultuous time in his life. He would meditate at the cave in, I believe, Hira, where he would ponder upon what was real, what wasn't real, what the meaning of life was. I'm sure many people do that. However, when the revelation came to him, he was thrown into a state of panic and confusion. He thought maybe I'm going crazy, like he didn't understand what was happening. He was nervous and lost and scared. And he didn't understand what was happening. So he reached out to the only person he knew he could trust, which was his wife. She mentored him, she believed him, and she helped him work through understanding what was happening to him. She also did some investigation of her own to try and understand what these revelations meant. She contacted one of her cousins, whose name was Waraka ibn Nawfal, who was an historian priest. And he basically explained what was happening. In his mind, this is just evidence that Muhammad would become the prophet of God. During those 2 years, Khadija handled a very unusual solution. She saw the prophet, her husband, when he was most vulnerable and most human, and trying to understand what his purpose was in life. Not only did she understand what was happening, but she converted to Islam. She was the first Muslim. She helped the Prophet spread his message, and they remained married for 25 years. The relationship was very, very unusual for Arabia at the time. Even more unusual as the Prophet gained more influence in the region. For example, Khadija and the Prophet had a very loving and caring and very personal relationship. It was one based off of mutual advice-giving, honest discussion, and emotional support. Khadija even maintained her wealth and her trading empire while she was the Prophet's wife, and used it to help spread the message across their area. She suffered when the Prophet suffered through starvation and embargo when the Muslims were evicted from Mecca. The Prophet once said of her, "When all others opposed me, she supported me." It's important to say that Khadija was the first Muslim woman, and she was also the first Muslim. And today we live in an era where Muslim women are portrayed as subservient, submissive, not exactly very independent. And I find it satisfying that the very first Muslim was the complete antithesis to this trope. She was anything if not. Well, she was independent, of course. She ran her own business. So obviously she wasn't subservient. So she grew up in the rather patriarchal society of Arabia, which meant there was a lot of barriers to her kind of success early on in her life. Yet she negotiated her own life on her own terms, managed her family, and made her own life. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I think she's one of my role models. I admire her drive that she had so, like, the deck was dealt against her, basically. And even despite that, she could make something of it. And it was impressive. But there's something else fundamental about her that I admire, which is her perseverance. She saw the Prophet as not just a messenger of God and the leader of the Ummah, the community, but also as a vulnerable human. Through observation, she understood Prophet Muhammad in a way no other person ever could and ever will. That is something I try to do, and it's something I know is utterly impossible for me to even come close to matching. But there was something else that she had that I tried to emulate, which is the role of the comforter or the supporter. For example, I'm sure if you've been in school, you remember your school days, there was always students who were outcasts, people who had no friends, they weren't in any cliques, any social groups. They were tormented by loneliness, and everyone really can shine. Everyone is a gem. Maybe they're not cut very well, but they can be. So, over the last few years, I've found myself in the unusual situation where I see those kind of people, and I reached out to them over the last few years, and I can say that by playing the role of the comforter, by finding people who are lost and confused and bringing them close to me and trying to draw connections to them, it has built a network of friends that I'm so grateful for. And some of my best friends were people I've met through this role of the comforter. So Sufi Muslims, they don't see gender. They don't see gender as two discrete things. They rather see them as like a scale a person can have. There's masculinity, there's femininity. So I can say that Khadija helps me find my feminine side and helps me express it in ways where I can make other people's lives better. So for me, Khadija isn't just a model for Muslim women, she's the model for all Muslims. Thank you.
And next up is Zainab.
Thank you. My name is Zainab Tanser. I'm a sophomore at MIT Charter High School. So the person I want to talk to you about today is one of the most influential women in the history of Islam. She was the Prophet's daughter, the wife of the fourth Khalifa, and the first woman teacher in all of Islam. First, I want to include a short biography of her life, then go on to explain why I picked her as my role model. The name of this person is Fatima. Born around 605 in Mecca, she was the only one of the Prophet's children who outlived the Prophet himself. When her mother, Khadija, died, she took such good care of her father that she was given the title of Abiha, and this means the mother of her father. Even as a child, she was an example to everyone, as can be seen in this example. After Khadija died, the Prophet married Salama. Salama was asked to tutor Fatima, and when asked, she replied, "How can I tutor one who is the personification of high virtues and purity? It is I who should learn from her." During her childhood, Fatima faced many hardships. The enemies of the Prophet constantly harassed him by cursing at him, throwing stones, and beating him. And this increased when Khadija, his wife, and Abu Talib, his uncle, passed away. Each time this happened, Fatima would take care of her father and she would tend to his wounds. Even though she saw how her father was treated, she was never discouraged and she always had faith in him and in Islam. Her family was mocked and humiliated every day, and yet she still went through with her faith, and she always had faith. When she was about 18 years old, suitors started asking her father for her hand in marriage. But the Prophet turned down each of them politely as he was waiting for a sign from God. Then it was seen that Fatima was the model for young women at that time, and Ali was the model for young men at the time. So it was seen that after Fatima's consent was gained, they got married, and they moved to a house that was close to both the Prophet and the mosque. They had 4 children together named Hassan, Hussein, Zainab, and Kulthum. An idea of how generous a family they are can be understood of how they had to fast for 3 whole days because each time someone new would come to their door, first it was a beggar, then an orphan, then a prisoner, and they each asked for food, so they gave it all away. So the Prophet had a lot of admiration for Fatima, and whenever she arrived at the mosque, he would stand up in respect to her. This wasn't just in respect to his daughter, but in respect to women at that time, because it was really uncommon for women to be respected in the Arabian society. Every morning, the Prophet would go to the front of her house and say, "Peace and blessings on the people of the household of the Nabi." The Nabi would be like the Prophet's kin. So the Prophet did this so that he could show to his companions that the house and its occupants were very special to Islam and to Allah, and that they would be respected after his death. The way Fatima died was told in a very moving manner by Asma bint Umais, who was someone that stayed at their house and helped with household chores. Fatima had just prepared food and told Asma that she was going to pray. Fatima would usually say takbir, which is a greeting to Allah, loudly at certain intervals. So when Asma heard nothing, she went to check in on her and found that she had passed away. After she told Ali, she went back home to feed the children, and the children said that they wouldn't eat without their mother present, and then she had to tell them that their mother had died. As Ali was bathing Fatima for the last time, he cried very loudly, and it is said by some historians that she was buried in her own home which is now the Masjid-e-Nabawi. So Fatima led a very hard yet admirable life, and she's known by two different names, Zahra, which means the Lady of the Light, and Sayyidatun Nisa al-Amin, which means leader of the women of the world. She set the example for how a wife, daughter, and mother should be, and the importance given to her shows her virtues. So, although the Prophet was mocked for not having any sons, Fatima was very important in his eyes, and she was the one who to continue the family line with her children, and these were the only grandchildren of the Prophet. There are certain parts of Fatima's life that I would like to point out, and these are what inspired me to write about her. The first is that she was a teacher. At a time when women were degraded and given little to no worth, she was a teacher, and she would take the knowledge that she learned from the Prophet and teach it to both men and women. And another important characteristic is that even as a child, she respected and took care of her father as if she was a grown woman. Her personality is also very admirable, as she never lied and was pure of heart. She was the first woman who learned Islam firsthand from the Prophet himself. I want to be able to manifest her values and virtues in my daily life. I want to be a caring daughter to my parents, a friend and a teacher to my friends and siblings, and sincere and devoted member of my community. I want to show to the world that role models like Fatima show that Islamic culture really respects and cherishes women. Thank you.
And last but not least, we have Ruhi Khan, which is my friend Rumi's younger sister, and I've known her for a long time.
Assalamu alaikum, peace be with you, and good morning. My name is Ruhi Khan, and I'm a rising freshman at New York Charter High School. During the 8th grade, while choosing an idea for my term paper, I not only gained a topic, but a role model. Malcolm X's story may not be as well known as Martin Luther King Jr., but he was equally important to the civil rights movement. One day, when Malcolm X's mother was home alone with her 3 young children and pregnant with him, Ku Klux Klan members came pounding at their door with shotguns and rifles, demanding Malcolm's father, the Reverend Earl Little. Even before his birth, Malcolm X was feeling the effects of being a civil rights activist given to him in his blood from his father. Events like this continued throughout Malcolm X's life, into adulthood, leading him into a life of crime and dissatisfaction. Malcolm moved to New York City and in Harlem gained his infamous nickname, Detroit Red. Inevitably, Malcolm X was caught for some criminal endeavor or the other, and he was sent to prison. There, Malcolm began reading and studying and embraced the honor roll student persona he was able to have as a child. Malcolm discovered the magnificence of faith, specifically Islam. He had read books on Islam, and in prison, he converted. This was the first of 2 very big changes in his life. Malcolm X found a purpose. He wanted to do good, not bad. So after he was released, Malcolm X became a member of the Nation of Islam. Its leader, Elijah Muhammad, was Malcolm X's idol, and he respected him immensely. The Nation of Islam was a black supremacist group, meaning that their goal was not to spread equality, but to put down non-blacks, and said that race defined one's level of superiority. Malcolm X began preaching the NOI's theory, and with his charismatic personality and powerful way of speaking, Malcolm X quickly caught the attention of not only fellow African Americans wishing for a better life, but whites intent on keeping their power. Soon, Malcolm X had overtaken the Nation of Islam and had become the main spokesperson, becoming even more popular than Elijah Muhammad. But even more influential in American history, Malcolm X's growth caused something else. Malcolm X's encouragement of self-defense and fighting back was often misinterpreted as violence, but someone who didn't advocate violence was Martin Luther King Jr. Although most who enjoyed their ways of discrimination disliked the civil rights movement altogether, having people fight back against unfair treatment caused problems for them. So it's not like Malcolm X's words can be hidden, but they could get overwritten. Newspapers, radios, and TV would feature MLK rather than Malcolm X. MLK was propelled into popularity that gained him support from not just blacks and whites, not just blacks but whites too, whereas Malcolm X was feared by whites. When Elijah Muhammad was caught with several affairs, some even bearing children, Malcolm X was distraught. All of his thoughts and beliefs crashed in on him, and rather than keep silent like Elijah Muhammad wanted, he renounced his membership and left to complete Hajj. Hajj is an Islamic pilgrimage to Mecca once a year. Muslims must complete this pilgrimage at least once in their lives. It's a 3-day event including Eid al-Adha, a holiday celebrating Prophet Ibrahim, peace be upon him, and his devotion to God, as he was willing to sacrifice his own son to God. While on Hajj, Malcolm X achieved yet another remarkable life change. He saw people of different skin colors interacting as equals. Up until now, Malcolm X had only received hostility from other people of other skin colors. But while on Hajj, he saw that not only is racial equality an option, but a completely real and achievable concept. He realized that the Nation of Islam's beliefs and philosophy did not overlap with Islam. After discovering that he was doing bad yet again under Elijah, he still managed to reform himself. He changed his name and took on a new philosophy. After Hajj, Malcolm X, now El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz, preached equality and peace. Sadly, he did not make as large of an impact as he could have, as he was assassinated by a member of the Nation of Islam. There were three major parts in Malcolm X's life, with two major changes in him and his philosophy. Malcolm X went from crime to good intent with good outcome. Being misled isn't a bad thing, unless your ways and mistakes aren't noticed and you don't improve yourself. Malcolm X is a perfect example of being misled and changing himself till he got to the right place. And his life taught me that. Not many people are able to recognize their flaws, and even if they do, reforming themselves completely is even more rare. Malcolm X did this not once, but twice, in a way that benefited those who needed it. When African Americans suffered from racial inequality, he stood up for them because they couldn't. This is the Islam Malcolm X taught me, to recognize flaws and address them with changes. And with your improved self, go out and do something to make other people's lives easier and better. Malcolm X, as a Muslim and as an American, is a very influential role model to me. And in his words, if you don't stand for something, you will fall for anything. Thank you.